How's it going?
Really well, really well. I guess first of all, thank you so much for like agreeing to do this. And how did you go from you studied music in Pennsylvania, like went to college there, but I think when we met, you were like in later in your 20s and not just getting started in LA, but you kind of hit the ground running. So I mean, how did you even go about making that, and what was kind of the decision factors for making that?
Yeah, I mean I went to school in Pittsburgh and I lived in Pittsburgh and I was just a musician there. I like played in a bunch of bands and played in a bunch of jazz clubs and I had a bunch of students and I had like a really kind of robust, kind of fun artist life in this small city. It was like pretty active. But I just knew that I wanted to do something more. Like I knew I wanted to, work on a more national or international level. And obviously, you kind of you have to go where the work is. So, I don't know. I guess I maybe just had some conversations with people and just decided that I would just move. Like I didn't know anyone. I didn't, I really didn't, I didn't know anyone. I just kind of came out and then, yeah, just kind of used that to my advantage because I needed friends and I needed a life. So, all of my networking was not really networking. It was like, trying to build friendships and get work, which, meant like going to jam sessions and just, just meeting people and playing as much as I could.
Do you think it was like a good bit of paying it forward in a way?
Oh yeah, oh, 100%. Yeah, it's like definitely the paying your dues thing is real. Like I totally went through a period of time where I just said yes to everything. Like I said yes to everything. And some of the gigs I did when I first got out here are hilarious when I think about it now. Because I was literally on Craigslist just looking for like who needed a guitar player. Like I played at like Hananas with a bunch of old dudes just playing classic rock music on St. Patrick's Day, or like I played in this like really weird 80s cover band that like played all this like obscure stuff, but like no one came to their gigs. Like we were playing like these mega 80s hits at some like cafe in mid city for, two people. Like, yeah, there's definitely a paying your dues, I think.
The first artist was like Drake Bell, I think, if I remember right, or was it?
My first major artist was actually I did a gig with like I don't know, I did a couple like smaller artists like Aubrey O'Day and like um Shannon Bex from that old group Danity Kane. Um but the first like real big tour that I got was Nick Jonas.
Yeah, and then from there you just kind of became like the go-to, like, oh, we need like a female guitarist that can actually like shred, you know?
Yeah.
Was Who have you worked with? What have you done?
I mean, Halsey is my latest, gig that I've been on for a couple of years, but I played for Nick Jonas. I played with the Black Eyed Peas for a couple of years. I did a tour with Chris Brown. I've played, a couple tours with Drake Bell, and then just a bunch of other pop artists here and there for shows and TV, like Lauren Jareggi and Madison Beer. And I'm playing SNL with Olivia Rodrigo this coming weekend. A bunch of TV stuff. I played in the house band of American Idol, some other, late night TV shows too. So
And then I guess like all the YouTube stuff and like social that you've been working on, and then some things with like is it Keeley and TC Helicon that you have like partnerships with?
yeah, my Instagram is kind of a facet of my career, I guess. I've done like a masterclass with Pickup Music, that Instagram page, and I work with different companies, like I do a lot of demos, like demos for Fender. I recently did one for Heritage. Yeah, and you're right, Keeley, TC Electronics, like yeah.
When you went to LA, like did being an artist mean to you like playing on stage, like being a gun for hire? Like I guess what did that look like to you?
I wanted to be like kind of what I became. Like I wanted to be that girl like that you hired to play for like, the big tours and the big pop tours. I mean, I just really love guitar. I guess my artistry and like the stuff I write is kind of my own separate thing, but I don't necessarily think you always have to move somewhere to do. But I think for like The work is the hired gun.
There's so many different paths we can take. Like I think throughout my journey, like I've been trying to figure out what it is that I do. But how did that path align with you? Like what was that path for you? Like from growing up, getting your first guitar, like what did that look like?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I wasn't even really aware of like where I wasn't even aware that what I do for a living was like a thing until I was like 21. Like I just didn't even know that that's something you could do. I mean, I grew up in a really small town, and I went to school in a pretty small city that was really super old school and conservative. I mean, there was just no contemporary music there. I mean, everything was like you either studied jazz or you studied classical music. And I mean, just like nothing beyond 1970 or 80 was ever even like discussed. It was just like not even a thing. So I don't know. I think I just really, growing up, I guess, I mean, I started playing guitar when I was 12 or 13. And I just like really, I just loved all kinds of guitar playing. I mean, I would learn like Metallica guitar solos. I loved like Sublime and the kind of Southern California ska and punk scene. I really liked that music, and I liked singer-songwriter stuff. I liked Nora Jones. I would learn, jazz chords for Nora Jones songs to sing. I just kind of loved it. It was kind of all over the map. And so that's why I went to school for it, just because I loved it. I don't even think I really like had a I don't know. I just loved it. I don't think I had any idea like what to do with that. So I just, I studied jazz there, and I got a degree in music education, just thinking like, okay, I'm going to teach, and I just want to like, make playing a part of my life. And that's when when I started playing in like a pop cover band in Pittsburgh, where we would play like just every Thursday night, and it was gay bar. And they would play on our break sets. They would play like live Beyonce shows or like live pop star shows. It's very like, yeah, it was a gay bar. I thought, the Madonna shows, all the great stuff. And I saw during one of the Beyonce shows, I saw Bebe McGill, her old guitar player, I think her first female guitar player that she had, shredding a guitar solo with her. And that was the moment it clicked for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I could do that, or I want to do that.
Yeah, that's insane. And then there's so much that goes into it. So I think from the artist side of things can be quite different from being like a session musician or a songwriter. And like,
Totally.
So whenever you first moved out to LA, were you like working side gigs, hustles, like, and then now you kind of figured out the ecosystem and kind of like the pocket in which you sit in, and I guess the business side of things how has that changed or gotten easier like as your career has grown?
Um,
Because like especially when you're going into it, you have like no idea what even exists, or
I
like
know.
and it's kind of exciting in a way because you're getting calls, and like every call is almost a new adventure in a way. Like
Totally.
JJ that you did Asia with,
JJ Lin, yeah. Mm-hmm.
and like that sounds like an awesome experience, but then like you go to Asia for like what was it, half a year, 8 months, and you're like, I don't think I'm gonna go to Asia ever again.
Yeah. Did we have a conversation about that? Yeah, that was tough. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely gotten easier. Just, just having kind of financial freedom too. Like once you start making money, I mean, it just really, to be frank, makes life easier.
Absolutely.
But yeah, because I mean, part of the reason I'm saying I said yes to just everything that I did back then is just, it's broke. So it's, just a way to just like kind of keep going, to be honest, so that makes it easier, but also it's just more like purposeful, it's like now I'm just more purposeful in like what I choose to do. Like I kind of know, yeah, like I know I'm familiar with the ecosystem of it all. Like what is this group of musicians or this artist, what are they going to be looking for? What's this artist going to be looking for? And do I personally feel like I can deliver that? Do I want to deliver that? Is that something, does that align more with what I feel that I stand for? I think now it's like, I'm just more in touch with my values, as my own personal values as a musician. And yeah. And so kind of just being like choosy in that way, and like, being able to kind of like, pick gigs that I feel I align better with, and comfortably say no to the ones that I don't, feel that way about.
No, and I think that's perfect because it kind of segues right into like this thing that we were talking about a little bit earlier. So it's this idea of success and like how people define success. I guess for yourself, what does success look like for you? Do you feel like after everything you've done, have you achieved success? Are you still striving to achieve success? Or is success something that is partly musical, but could also encompass like other areas of your life?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I do feel like I succeeded at that one singular goal that I had, way back when I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be this hired gun and play these massive tours. And like, that's what I want to do. And I do feel that I've succeeded in that way. And now, but now it feels like there's just like the next, rung, there's the next level. Like I'm working on a bunch of my own music, and I would love to, find some kind of success with that, be it anything, be it, gaining a small following or having placements in TV or, anything like that. It's just a different goalpost, but success, that's such an interesting concept, because it's something I learned quite quickly after I did a couple tours with Nick Jonas, and then he changed his band up. I realized pretty quickly that it's an ongoing thing. You don't just, you do one gig and you made it, it's like, which was like my ignorant, I didn't know anything. It was my ignorant, thought before, like, you get a big gig, you're a musician now, like you've done it. That's not true. It's something you have to continually do. Just like when, artists come out with if a new artist has a hit song, that's really, they say, of course, how hard that is to do, but it's kind of harder to get the second hit song, right? It's like a new, oops, sorry, this is my fault for the black screen.
Especially with albums, like bands that come out with a second album. Me and my manager were talking the other day, and he was like, you have like 25, 28 years to write the first album, and then the label comes back and they're like, hey, so we need the second one in like 9 months.
Yeah.
So I totally get where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, success is like it's kind of a continual thing. And I don't know, it's kind of, I think everyone kind of has to define it for themselves as far as what that means. I mean, it's a whole journey. I mean, I don't know, to me, success is like, you're working, you're creating, you're growing, always, if you're, I think that's the only, that's to me, maybe the definition of success.
Yeah, I think, so one thing that I like set out to do early on was try and find like, as an artist, like I watched in New Orleans, like 80-year-old cats just playing the same gig, trying to make ends meet and like never really going anywhere. So I wanted to try and chase something different, right? So I set out to do like the whole financial side of things and try and gain financial freedom so I'd have the freedom to do everything else, which led me to some crazy situations like meeting you and some awesome opportunities. But I think along the way, like there were parts where I tied my identity into like what I did, maybe like with Preview, being a casting director, or like traveling the world, or being an entrepreneur. And I think now that I've gone through seasons of burnout and seasons of where like that gig ends, and my identity may have been tied to like this thing that I did instead of something that I was producing. It's almost like joy in a way, right? Like success is one of those concepts that it's like happiness and joy sound alike, but they're really two totally different things. So I think now even more so, like I'm trying to define success in who I am as a person. And I think that Nick as a songwriter benefits from that sort of ideology. Because like music is just, yeah, anyways.
No, that's so, yeah, that totally resonates with me. I mean, I think that's 100% true. I mean, it's kind of yeah, and maybe you experience this in your jobs. I've experienced this in my gigs because I've just hopped from artist to artist, and especially upon losing gigs, like losing a gig or like getting replaced on a gig because the artist wants something different. It's like it's sort of yeah, it's like a massive crush to you because you identify with it or you allow that to become your identity, and that's really not we aren't our job, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but you're moving into like writing. Well, you probably always like wrote your own riffs and like done arrangements. So I guess moving into that kind of season of your life, has COVID helped with that a bit, or is this something that you've always been working towards?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely helped because I've been able to make it a priority, whereas before I wasn't. And I have always, I mean, I've always considered myself at least partially a songwriter too, because I've always written songs. And in Pittsburgh, I would, sing and host open mics, and I've done a few open mics here. I've played at Monday at Hotel Cafe. I did a show at I forget, a club in North Hollywood with a band of my own music. And so I've always kind of done that. I've just kind of made that music, but I've never like promoted it or made it a real, made it a real thing. And because my focus was so much on, just like playing and working.
Music.
Yeah. So now it's like having this time is kind of like allowing me to really, really just sit with my own art and my own creation and develop that.
Awesome. I think like as you develop the product too, are you finding now you have to, as an artist, as opposed to like almost like a guitarist mercenary, like, do you have to think more of like the business side and like forming connections in a different way, or is it almost feel like starting from ground zero, but at like a different part in your career, right?
Yeah, it's definitely ground zero. I mean, I'm so focused now on just making everything. I've just been like tracking and writing. That's been kind of my focus. But once I feel like it's in a spot where I'd like it, and then maybe have some visuals, then yeah, I feel like I'm gonna have to kind of start from ground zero. I mean, luckily I have a decent social media following to kind of like help. So that kind of helps. But yeah, otherwise it's totally like going to be completely new territory for me.
Yeah, like I'm kind of in the weeds at the moment. Like we're working on what's the album, but it was sort of one of those things that I realized like this isn't something I can do alone. Like, because I think for me, like what I want music to be is like the ability to write and create and express and be a voice, sort of like the way I compartmentalize the world. But in order for me to do that, like there's so many other facets that have to take place, and especially like with the tools we have between social, but like there's so many different places that my attention can be taken away. Like, so we have to like be managers of our own social media. We have to manage, especially as artists, like with the press and dealing with like the marketing plans, the business strategy, and then also like the finances of it all. So it's just like, I think to coming up with like a really solid plan to kind of navigate those waters. But yeah, I have some really, they're off a list here, basic questions or weird questions. How does your art relate to society or politics?
Huh. Um, I don't know if it does. I mean, I don't know if it really does. I mean, it's at least in a particular way.
I think it might, and not to help you out with like your own.
No, please tell me.
um, I think like in a way, in a sense, like your role may be to be like a band member, but like you're also cultivating a community, right? So in a way, like you are influencing like culture, young guitarist, like you do have a certain style to your playing, like the intervals that you choose and the way that you kind of like shred up the neck, and it's like an arpeggiated but very select interval kind of style. And I think that in the role of society, like that could definitely influence young players, especially doing like the guitar mastery intensives and things.
Yeah, I mean, well, thank you. I hope that I'm contributing in some way. I mean, that's I think what I don't know how much it relates to politics, but I mean, it's like I definitely feel the urge to sound different and to be different. I mean, I really am not interested in I guess that's kind of what makes me different from some hired gun musicians. I mean, I know in some ways we're kind of like machines up there because we're just like playing parts. Like a lot of some gigs I have, I'm just like, sometimes I just play stuff and I'm like, oh my God, a monkey could play this. Like, why am I up here, But in my own playing in my own life, I really strive to kind of be like the opposite of that, like always kind of rethinking the guitar, rethinking how I can play something, rethinking how I can harmonize something.
Do you ever just hit walls in that though?
Hmm?
Do you ever just like hit walls and like your own skill and like approaching things from different angles?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's totally been a journey. It's like at one point, is the guitar so fascinating. It's just like such a strange instrument. There's this, you can play the same note, some of them 5 different ways, So it's like, it's especially when you're starting out, it's just kind of this, you're like looking down at this mystery. So you're kind of, as you unlock everything, it's fun to explore. And now that I'm kind of like more, just way more familiar with the neck and the fretboard than I've ever been in my life. Yeah, you kind of hit walls because you got to find new approaches when it's less of a mystery. You have to look hard. I guess you have to look harder for the mysterious things.
I think I've been a concert horn major, music education major at LSU. So I studied like concert French horn and was kind of engrossed in like classical orchestral wind.
Oh, cool.
Thanks. And picking up the guitar, it was like something I did because a buddy picked up the bass and the other one picked up the guitar, and we would just sit in the room like jamming to the iPod. And like that's how we would learn riffs. And then as I've gotten older, like I would learn songs for different reasons, like to play and stuff. And then eventually now, like I've gotten so engulfed in like everything else around me that like I'll pick up the guitar and like I'll play this. Like I have a couple of rote things that I'll continue to go back to. You know what I mean? But I think now that I'm approaching, so my ambition as an artist was to get out of my own head. So like I could hear things, and my goal was to be able to make these things move at the speed at which I was hearing like either chords or just like double stops. And that way I could write what I wanted to write and sing, because I'm more of a singer and I always approached the guitar that way. But after I kind of hit, that was my definition of success for a while, like just being able to like think it and play it. And
That's massive though, yeah.
yeah, it's supernatural in a way, like that state of flow. But once I hit that, I quit doing the things that caused me to enjoy and fall in love with the instrument. But now that I'm moving into like a different realm, like I'm a songwriter, I write songs, that's cool and lovely, but not everybody wants to hear James Taylor after like they just hear like this kick-ass performance, right? And it's just pop and EDM and drums, and it's just like, where do I fit in? And like, yes, there's a place for the type of music I write. However, I think I'm approaching music again from like a production standpoint, and like taking different riffs and things and then like breaking down drum grooves, or like taking a synth sound that I like and then trying to recreate it inside of the DAW, or like rediscovering guitar lines and then just comping players like Mateus, or just these different, like I hear something now and it's very rare that I'll hear something I'm like, holy shit, but when I do, like I try and take it, disassemble it so I can understand it and then piece it back together. And then I'll find like through that same process of like hearing something, like it's almost like hearing bebop or gypsy guitar for the first time, like you hear it and it just, now if you're at a certain level, like it unlocks a part of your brain where like you just accidentally slide into certain things and you're like, oh, that was a cool accident, like they're gonna keep that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So yeah, I think that
It's funny you said that what did you say? You studied French horn or you played some French horn? And
I was a concert coordinator.
yeah, that's so cool. I played French horn in high school for like a year or two. And I remember learning the horn instrument and thinking like, it's so cool, like, and yeah, like supernatural that like your brain is hearing the pitch and it like tells your mouth how to be. And you're not even like necessarily doing much. Like there's that funny connection. And the same thing, I mean, that's on a very like basic level of like pitch, but like, yeah, same thing with guitar. When you can get to that point, it's just there's just a lot more going on for you to like actually take like, melodies and ideas in your head and put on in your fingers.
Absolutely. And I think this like could lead us into a really interesting topic for people like in the class who are just strictly like instrumentalists. And it's for me, like as a songwriter and finding my voice, I think like I drew inspiration from people like John Mayer, and then I'd hear an interview with John and he'd be like, I love BB King. And then you obviously hear like Stevie Ray Vaughan is playing, and it's really prominent, but it's neither BB King or Stevie Ray Vaughan, like he's John Mayer. So I think like especially people hiring you for this, like it's almost like Mateo Sasato, like when you hear him play, like I could be in a dark room, like computer closed, and like I know it's him playing, and I feel the same way when I hear you're playing. So I guess what was that path and that journey like in developing the sound, and who were some of those artists for you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I went to a school that was really like old school, and so I did a lot of transcribing and playing old jazz standards, and I studied a lot of like Joe Pass and a lot of Johnny Smith, and I think Johnny Smith is a lot where my style comes from, because I studied a lot of his like, made like he has these exercises with these arpeggios that kind of span the whole neck. He also, like in his chord melodies, he has a really unique way of approaching harmony that feels a little bit different than the guitar players of his time, because he wasn't necessarily always playing the standard voicings, standard jazz voicings. Like he was really infusing a lot of kind of folk voicings in there, like more open stuff and like sus2s and sixes, and eliminating the seventh, which typically makes it sound a lot jazzier, for lack of a better term. So I mean that definitely influenced my style, but also just sort of being kind of self-taught also is like, my people on Instagram at least like always comment on my
Right hand technique.
yeah, and and especially when I do demos for like other companies, people like to hate on it, and it is fucked up. Like it's not right, but it's like it's me though. It's how I played, and it's just like Jimi Hendrix had like, not would never compare myself to Jimi Hendrix, but like great players, they have their own approach to the instrument because they're it's from them. They're not necessarily
I think that also comes from a bit of like, especially when you're self-taught, like I took lessons for like a year, and the most I learned was like Smoke on the Water and just some left hand, right hand coordination, just 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4.
Yeah.
From that though, and jamming to the radio and like hearing these things that I wanted to cop or emulate, like I didn't like reading tablature, and because I played horn, was much stronger at like listening and then digesting and then just trying to figure it out. But from that, like I have a weird right hand technique too. Like I use 1, 2, and 3 a lot more than 4 and 5, and that's totally cool. But I think also like it gives me this triplet thing almost in a way. It gives it like the chord strumming a different feel. Like, and I think that one of the biggest barriers that we can come across like when we're learning, especially from like a classical side, is like this is right and this is the only way, and if you don't do it this way, then like you actually don't play an instrument, or like you're never going to make it, especially on the classical side. But I think that as I'm diving more into like contemporary music, like the mix engineer that I work with and almost everybody I speak to, they're like, dude, if it sounds good, then it is good.
It's my favorite. That's my favorite line. Who is that? Is it Freddie Hubbard, or is that someone on some horn player said that? And I say that to students all the time. Now I've been teaching a lot, and I use that phrase all the time.
Yeah,
Like, if it sounds good, it is good.
yeah, as long as it doesn't inhibit technique, you know?
Yeah.
That's,
I'm working on some music, so I'll just put it down.
do you want to share? Awesome.
No.
Anything you want to share with, I guess, like before we sign off, like anything you have coming up, releasing, going on, want to share, or let the world know about?
Yeah, like I said, I'm playing on SNL on May 15th. I'm playing with Olivia Rodrigo. I'm gonna release another solo guitar piece soon. And yeah, I'm starting a project that's kind of like a country dream pop project.
Wow.
So yeah, so stay tuned.
Ambient choruses.
Hmm?
So killer lyric writing and like ambient pop sound.
Yeah, that's what I'm going for. I'm also I've been learning pedal steel. Like I just got one like earlier this year. So I'm, writing with that and, figuring that instrument out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is like literally the coolest thing ever. Yeah, once you get it down, let me know because definitely need some pedal steel. I think the world always needs more pedal steel, but I think there's like 4 studio cats in the world left that people.
I know they're few and far between. So hopefully I'm gonna figure it out. Hopefully, maybe do some country gigs.
Well, I think you got it. Does that have the GB? What is it like? It bends the pitch on the G and the B, or is it the?
Yeah. I mean, the tuning of this is like an E9, so it actually has a G sharp in it. There's 4 knee levers and 3 foot pedals, and they all kind of like do, and they all do different things. I think about it less of the note. I was like thinking about everything in terms of like root, third, fifth, right? Just thinking about the number and like, okay, like this pedal takes the 3 to the 4. So instead of having a 1 chord, you have a sus chord, or this, changes the 5 to the 6. So that if you, play those 2 pedals together, you get a 6 chord, that kind of thing.
Super cool. Super cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Last question on the way out. And the prompt says, what advice do you have for young artists? And I'm going to change that to like developing young or aspiring artists, just people trying to make a way.
Yeah, just keep building your skill. I mean, you have to be, you need to be good at what you do. I mean, that's the first and foremost. So, just like learn everything you can, digest everything you can, stay curious, listen to other people, follow their paths, transcribe as much music as you can, follow what you really like. You want to be authentic. You want to be real with yourself. You're not going to get anywhere by faking it or being someone else, so all the things I just said, like transcribe and learn and listen and to the music that really, that you really love, so that you can kind of like, that's all going to go into the mixing bowl that's your brain, and it's going to come out into something that, is authentically you.
That's awesome. That's super sweet.